Morning, folks. I got the cue that we're ready to start, and I'm Melvin Hunter Jr. I'm a member of the Hualapai tribe, located in Northwest Arizona, and my background is really growing up in suppression, and then working over in the hazardous fuels reduction department, and probably the last 10 years doing more of forestry. And I work today at the BIA Western Regional Office. And this our the mission. So that's probably the most important piece of what we do, like any other mission statement across the board. But our main priority is to promote economic opportunity, enhance the quality of life, and protect trust assets for tribes. And nationally, 574, and within Western Region, 42. And for those tribes, they all have an agency. So the organization would be from the region to the agency to the tribe. So it's quite a bit of states there: California, Oregon. If you look to the top there, there's a sliver of Oregon and Idaho. So it's pretty broad. And probably the best part about our job is when we look down here at the cover types, over 1 million acres of timber and 2.4 million acres of woodland. And those stats just tell me there's a lot of opportunity out there for tribal government to develop tribal members to manage their land as they see fit. So for hazardous fuels reduction, and it's not a big crowd, so maybe you want to ask a question, just ask it then. The funding mechanisms, and this is right from the 2024 Interagency Standard of Fire Irrigation Operations, or the Red Book. Tribes have 3 opportunities for fire protection: direct service. That would be an agency with a fire management officer, maybe an assistant, and a fuel specialist that have the title and being paid by the Bureau of Indian Affairs. That would be direct service. The tribe doesn't have the capacity to do it, so we're directly providing that service as Indian Affairs and their trustee. Self-determination contracts or self-governance compacts. Indian Self-Determination Act, 1975, that empowered the tribes. So that says, now that I'm a Indian Affairs Fire Management Officer, the tribe has an interest to contract that program. I receive $250,000 a year for 2 employees, and that's managing a couple Type 6 engines. That all now goes to the tribal side. And then for me, it could lead to RIF. They could place me in a different agency, but I'll find a home eventually. So that's really the power of Indian self-determination. In a sense, we're to work ourselves out of a job. And provide the technical assistance. So the position and funding, it goes across, and now it's appropriated. So that 250 now becomes funding directly for the tribal program. And then they would report directly to the agency superintendent. And then that also comes with facilities. Facilities can be contracted, and all equipment can be contracted. So real easy. I had a job, I had a program as a BI employee. That's now the tribe's program, and I'm working at a different agency or doing something new. Grants. Oh, and by the way, there's a link there if you want to read from the Indian Affairs webpage on what that definition is. But that is like true sovereignty of since 1975. And what's important about it, I think, is Indian Affairs employees, we often, I guess in this room and environment, we always have the perspective of fire behavior and what that means on the land, and not or ecology in wildlife, but not necessarily tradition and culture. And that's why for the tribes to operate these programs, it's pretty important, because every tribe out of that 42 or 574 across the nation, they all use vegetation in different means. They all use culture, tradition in a different manner. So we do have to adapt just about everywhere we go, and a lot of time just listen on what's taking place and how can we manage. In some tribes, they just don't share a lot of information, so that keeps it, their solitude and what's important to them. And then grants. Grants is another mechanism that requires a tribal resolution, so it's actually an additional step. So we have a 638 contract that has a scope of work, and it may say the discipline of forestry. But if it's a one-time fund, like higher education funds, that now has to become a grant because it's a one-time fund. So these are things that, we're trying to build internally so we have a smoother process for tribes. And then OSG, Office of Self-Governance, that funding's a little different. The tribe would submit a proposal, make a request. Internally, they've already have a built scope of work, and they may need to add that forestry component. But our funding now goes straight to DC and right to the tribe. And then the rules have now changed for those funding types. And what I understand as this one-time funding is that it can be reprogrammed for a different need or use. And those are some questions that, are somewhat, we're never hesitant, but if we're not seeing the production on the ground and it's stand replacing, we're in a place where, well, it was funded, but the funding's sitting somewhere completely different. But those are some of the mechanisms that the tribes do have. Specifically for myself, the OSG, there's a lot more clarity needed in understanding. So as a trustee, I can better support tribal government. And then cooperative agreements, the 638 component, the rules and scopes of a program, forestry, fire, fuels, and then the co-op would be the mechanism for reimbursement. So currently the co-ops are written for suppression, fuels, bear, emergency stabilization. There's a few other components in there, but that's mainly a reimbursement. To fund, we haven't put money through that to fund the operation. It's always the operation's completed and reimbursed through that cooperative agreement. And then HFR in general, established to reduce impacts of fires, tribal lands, cover types, forest, woodland, and rangeland. And there's our reference there for the 90 IM Chapter 4. And the Interior Fuels and Post-Fire Reporting System. That's used to be the previous NIFPORs. I tell the acronym, but I probably get it messed up. National Fire Priority some report system. So that's a replacement, but the agency, the BIA side and the tribal side, that's where all their projects go. If it's activity, that's a lot of the administrative side, NEPA compliance, the positions being funded, and then the actual project for implementation. It's all reported there, and that really, after that approval, is how the funding comes across from central office, which is Washington. It'll come down. That's already committed to the tribe, and then any funding that we have late in the season becomes carryover. So different funding mechanisms like tribal priority allocation. Every program in Indian Affairs has its own TPA, and for us specifically in forestry, we have a TPA. So when a tribe says, hey, we're only matched or given up to 80% of this project, I'm going to request an additional 20%, we can do that through TPA, through their 638 contract. And it is a one-time funding, right? So use the grant. Well, what about the discipline and the scope of work? We'll use the 638. But you can see the difference there. But and that would be gov to gov is how those funding work. And then tribe to tribe, there's one mechanism would be their internal contracts, just contracts with other tribal government to meet that. And it is valid to pass through and subcontract for the tribes where they could lose their indirect cost. And then in conclusion, that's who we are in Indian Affairs. There is tribal government. There's an established program, whether it's on the tribal side or BIA side, and that program can be contracted to the tribe. And then there was the mechanisms, 638 grant, OSG, cooperative agreement. And then we have the rules and regulations of the hazardous fuels reduction program. And then to meet the mission, you saw the statistics there on the land base and the number of acres that's available per field forest type. But we do, strive to meet the quality of life, and that really is creating opportunity, empowering the tribal government, their tribal employees, tribal members, and then working with them to improve the trust assets. I don't know where that ever came about as a trustee. The capacity of BIA, we have over 2 million acres, combined 3 million acres, 42 tribes on our responsibility to manage all these lands. It's not even possible. It's going to be an outstanding day when we have to advocate for more funds because we're meeting that mission and putting more our funding to the tribal programs. So in the long term, that's what it is. And then a take home there, it's the silo. Is it a fuels issue? Ask HFR. See if fuels will fund it. When you break down these Indian Affairs manuals, they all have a component of fire. You cannot exclude that. So I really trying to break down some barriers. Say, well, go ask fuels, go ask timber, go ask forest development, go ask rangeland. It's still the same footprint, and you know, folks. And this isn't new. The whole deal, this whole program, what we do is absolutely not new. It's just, you know, making our best effort to meet that, and getting rid of these barriers. You know, be transparent. And help them work. So it's not a fuels issue, and I don't know where I heard that, but it's really our issue, you know, and collaboratively we can complete it. And I am optimistic about that. I think we can be there. So any questions for me? It's how the tribe writes it up. Yeah, it's under the tribe's scope of work. So there was a part. I've actually been a part of the Model 108 in a 638 contract, and what it paid for was an FMO, 2 engine captains, and then all the equipment. It was already paid by the government. It just transferred over in the facilities. And then from there, it'd be advocating for additional dollars. But the tribe does have every year to submit an annual funding agreement to increase dollars. And whether that's approved at that part, it's really in a self-determination deal, and we don't see what happens there. Yeah, so it's yeah, you can do that. Good, Raven.
Morning, everyone. So my name is Raven Honga, and I'm going to build off of, obviously, Mr. Hunter's presentation. But today I'm going to talk about WUI, which is a little more unique in my mindset. But a little bit of a background about me. Right, my name is Raven Honga. I work with the Hualapai tribe. Don't tell anyone, but that is where Mr. Hunter is from as well too. I went to school at NAU. I see some folks here, right? I'm an alum. Boo. I also got my master's at the University of Georgia. Completed that in 2022. Came back and right working for my home unit. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into this. And originally I didn't want to do a PowerPoint, so I wanted to freestyle with all of you guys and talk about what was going on. And I kind of realized that most people don't know or don't have an idea of what tribes or where reservations are at. So here's the Hualapai. So obviously on the left, on the left, it's the right Arizona, and then on the right is where the Hualapai is located. So for the most part, obviously the main thing, right, is the Colorado River runs through the top part of the reservation. This is about 1 million acres, and then obviously across the way is the famous, Grand Canyon National Park. So to get into the weeds of things and taking broad strokes about what the tribes do and how we initially get our funding for projects and our ideas. So the Okay, thought it was cut off. So the main thing is we do 638. So the Hualapai tribe, sovereign nation, has a rich history and deep connection in its lands. Right, we actively manage its natural resource under the Self-Determination Act of 1975. It's also referred to, or most commonly known as, 638. So through this mechanism, the Hualapai tribe partners with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We try to administer and implement various projects, or I just leave it at projects that we have that we're trying to look at doing. And the main thing that we look at is obviously either hazardous fuel, or we look at WUI, which is the Wildland Urban Interface. This approach allows tribes to asset local control over critical initiatives while utilizing federal fundings and utilizing technical support. So that's a huge one in my eyes, and I think that one is also underutilized because not necessarily knocking the tribe or anything like that, but currently for Hualapai, I am the only forester there. So really reaching out to BIA and asking for additional foresters to come down, that's a huge help to me. A key focus of the Tribe's WUI's program is to involve or to reduce wildfire risk and enhancing ecological health in areas of human development. Insects and wildlands. So the Hualapai tribe has identified several high priorities in areas for WUI projects, including Valentine, Fraser Wells. These locations are strategically selected based on their values to human and to wildlife, the proximity to community infrastructure, and potential for ecological restoration and reforestation. So the reason I didn't necessarily put any pictures of that or those places going on is because the tribe's real secretive about what they do. No, I'm just kidding. We do have some active projects going on, and I did want to take pictures. So I sent some of my folks out to take pictures, and they took pictures of the wrong projects and the wrong stuff. So I kind of had to leave it blank. So moving on, right? The WUI projects undertaken by Hualapai tribe encompass a variety of activities, such as fuel reduction, prescribed burning, and vegetation management. These efforts are designed to create defensible space, right, around structures and decrease the intensity of potential wildland fires, and improve overall forest health. In the Valentine, that focuses on protecting homes and the communities and facilities. And then also we emphasize Fraser Wells, which is maintaining critical infrastructure for wildlife and habitat. So when you were looking at projects or these types of ideas, there's really two types of WUI for the tribe that we look at. Obviously, it's protecting homes, right, infrastructures. This also includes historic sites. So we do have a number of historic sites, and the easiest one, and I like to use it as Valentine, right? We have an old boarding school located in that area, so that's obviously a main piece of history that we try to protect, things like that. And obviously, it's more within the community, so chances of wildfire actually hitting it, super slim, right? But we still, if we have to go in, maybe mow down some vegetation or do certain things as needed, we can do that. And then the other side to that for project-wise is looking at people who want to be a lumberjack, right? Who want to go out and live in the middle of nowhere, right? That are really kind of being a stewardship of the land. And that is something that we preach that, hey, the defensible space, if you guys choose, right, or don't choose to live out in these areas, these are certain things that you do have to look out for or do to not only meet the needs necessarily for kind of what forestry is preaching on the Hualapai side, but also so if there is a fire or anything like that, you still have a home, and et cetera, et cetera. So funding, benefits and goals, but funding as well. So funding for these initiatives is secured through the 638 contract with BIA. So kind of like what Mr. Hunter was saying, that 250, right, from an initial project comes over to the tribe. We look at it, we get that funding, we write up the scope of work, et cetera, and then we dictate where it goes and how we utilize it through our contract. The agreement provides the tribe with direct access to resources while ensuring the projects are tailored to the unique needs and priorities of the Hualapai community. So again, that's where the tribe, right, is able to dictate like ancestral lands, like we want to protect it because of A, Y, and B, and BIA is usually cool with it, and we can go run with it. The tribe develops comprehensive project proposals and collaborates with BIA specialists to align objectives with border, regional, and national fire management goals. The 638 mechanism also facilitates the hiring of local workforce members, fostering economic developments, and building tribal capacity in fire management and ecology restoration. So obviously, right, fire is in everything, and it does occur everywhere. We kind of have a running joke going on with some individuals, and why fire is so important, right? Because they say like, why do they get to go to Idaho or Minnesota, California, and fight all these fires? And how come like rat forest development or timber doesn't get all this stuff? Well, they do, but the joke is everything burns, right? So, other people besides us need the help. And if we have the resources and stuff like that through BIA, right, the contract, we're able to assist and kind of give that full circle of fundings and helping and all that as well too. So there's that. Through these WUI projects, the Hualapai tribe demonstrates its commitment to safeguarding its lands and communities from wildfire threats. This collaboration efforts with BIA not only enhances the safety of its lands, but the mission, right, as well too, which our mission may not be the same as BIA, but that's a good little collab right there. This helps tribes bring resilience to their lands, serves as a model for efficiency resource management in Indian country by leveraging the flexibility of 638, and the tribe continues to advance its long-term vision for sustainability levels and management within its own lands. So, in conclusion, right, this is a broad stroke, right, to keep confusing everyone. But we touched base with the previous presentation of how 638 contracts work, and then obviously I took a broad stroke once again with how funding comes over. But in retrospect, right, as we see projects fit on the tribal side, we'll obviously put it in through our 638, whether it's WUI, which is obviously a big one, especially considering where Hualapai is located at, and then obviously HFR is also another huge one, and fire as well. We see these scenarios, we write the projects or the proposals, we submit them, and if it doesn't get funding, great. The reason I say great is because kind of like what Mr. Hunter was saying before us, as time goes on, right, and there's TPA or Go Ask Forest Development or Go Ask Timber or Go Ask HFR, we have all these projects on the shelf. So when funding does come available, it's, hey, let's ask FD, all right, or let's ask FD's Forest Development. Let's ask Timber if they can fund these projects. And then it's more of like taking projects off the shelf, BIA funds them, and then the tribe's able to meet their goals and complete the mission. So hope that didn't confuse everyone too much, but do you guys got any questions for me? Sweet, that's what I like to see. Moving on to Ashton real quick.
Okay, my name is Ashton Lynch. I work for the Gila River Indian community as an environmental program manager for the Wildlife and Ecosystems program through the Department of Environmental Quality. Please don't ask me to say that again because that's extremely long. Melvin told me to make my presentation short, so I made it really short just in case there was questions for all of us at the end. I do have pictures, so mine's a little bit more entertaining. I'm kidding. So Melvin wanted me to talk about the projects going on within Gila River Indian community. My program, the Wildlife and Ecosystems program, yes, we deal with wildlife, but we also deal with the ecosystem. And the ecosystem in Gila River is a really tricky one because you have, saguaros, cactus, and then you have our woodland areas, which are being invaded by salt cedar, which is an extreme fire hazard. So as a community grows, a lot of the homes are being built into these really hazardous areas. There's no mention of any kind of defensible space or any WUI at all. So that is where we're coming to an issue within the community. And like I said, we are making fire breaks right now because there's no talk of defensible space or the wildland urban interface in these areas. So my program is in charge of constructing and implementing fire breaks within these areas with high density of invasive species like salt cedar. As we all know, salt cedar is standard placing, especially in woodland areas with mesquite, and as long as it takes to grow, standard placing, we might not ever see those trees again for like 50 plus years. And as I mentioned, as the population within the community increases, the wildland and urban interface becomes more common. Homes are being constructed in these backwooded areas. I go out into the field sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, there's a new build right here. And they're not thinking about any kind of defensible space whatsoever. So if a fire does come through there, that house is gone, the tribe loses that asset. These are a few of a couple of our fire breaks that we have right now on the western end of the community. So if you've been through Gila River, you see, if you drive through on the I-10, you see the saguaros, a bunch of dust, shrub here and there. But if you go more to the western end of the community, there's a lot more density in mesquite and salt cedar. So this is the issue area. This is the western end of the community. As you can see, this home is right up against a sea of salt cedar. And there's actually salt cedar to the back of it. We implemented this fire break, made it 100 feet in length, and now we are widening that to 200 feet because it's just crazy how dense the salt cedar is there. Melvin's been there. He's seen how much of a wall that is of salt cedar. So if a fire did hit that, that would just leave time for the residents to leave, and it most likely would not save the home. This other fuel break actually was utilized this fall during the fall fire that happened in this area. We were really fortunate that none of these homes up here were burned in the fire. The fire actually came up this way. The wind shifted, luckily, and it jumped into the river and started pushing west towards the mountain. And if it didn't have that wind shift, our fuel break would have been effective. This fuel break has actually been through, maintenance at least twice already. So it's actually a lot wider. This is an older map, so a lot of regrowth came in through right here. And our crew, with the help of some hotshot crews, went back and recut everything and widen it, so that if the fall fire that happened this fall occurred, then it would help these residents get out safely. So types of funding that the tribe has for these projects, we have a couple through the BIA, and then we just recently got one through the state, which we're able to utilize to expand some of our fuel breaks and then implement others in the problem areas within the community that have homes, like I said, growing into areas where there's no defensible space whatsoever. There's one road in, one road out. I mean, it's really scary in some of these areas. But what's really frustrating, though, is the tribe puts it on my program to have to fund and find people to build these fuel breaks or make them within the community. We've stressed to them, hey, this needs to be someone else's thing with defensible space, not the wildlife and ecosystems program. But I mean, if they give me money to do defensible space or wildland urban interface, then I will take it. But it's just being able to find money for the tribe to be able to initiate, defensible space programs, outreach and whatnot within the community. Because like I said, I could go to a community member's home and talk about it and they won't know what I'm talking about, blank stare, Are you going to do it for me? Like, no, sorry, I don't have the money. Maybe ask the tribe to see if they could help you with that. So unlike, Raven, where it sounds like they have a little more dialed in on the wildland urban interface, ours is, lack of funding and also being able to get across to the community and its members, the importance of defensible space in these areas. I think that's it for me. Yep, short and simple. Any questions? Go ahead.
Has the community had a wildfire go through in the last
Yeah,
years?
there was one in the fall in September that had one, and then the most, I think the biggest one after that was the Ethan fire in 2008. So post burn, salt cedar, comes back with revenge, and it did in all those areas. So it replaced any mesquite that had been growing in the area. So, mesquite is very important to the community. It's, goes back to being their livelihood. And so it replaced all of that. So that's what we're starting to see more. And with these, the fuel breaks, we're trying to leave the mesquite, distance them. So if a fire did come through, it's not going to replace them. Just so community members can still continue to use, the mesquite and what other native veg that comes back in that area. So, go ahead.
Are you guys doing any cut stub method on the fuel rates? Are you treating it in a time? And then you had mentioned an HFI site visit and doing the Tamarack beetle. Is that throughout the entire area or is it only certain pockets still?
So with the removal method, we do the stump cut method. And then unfortunately, my program cannot do the herbicide application. So we have to have someone else come in and do it for us afterwards. And as for the tamarisk beetle, so that area I had shown with the maps, it's really bad in that area, but we have found beetles all throughout the community and all throughout districts from the east side of the community to the west side of the community. So they're everywhere. You see, if you look out in that area, you see just a sea of brown, and then it starts to prick up again. So that's the second time the beetle is starting to do what it does best. Things will green up, and then it's brown all over again. So it's forever standing matchsticks out there. The salt cedars stay green very little, and then the beetles go ahead and, have open buffet out there.
Ashton, can you talk about your northern boundary on the city side, maybe the corridor, just the imports of WUI and fuels? It's public. If the fire were to escape the reservation and hit the racetrack, or something like that.
Yeah, so like our northwest boundary is open to, I guess that boundary just on the other side is state land. So there's not a lot of, I want to say, like policing going on there in regards to like recreation. So if a fire occurs on that side and jumps to our side, that's hard for us. But if a fire does come from our side and goes to the city side, because you have Phoenix International Raceway, you have the Salt River that goes through right there. There's a lot of development coming right up to the border of the community. I mean, there's a lot there that could go wrong. And and there's a lot of homeless people too there now, so that throws a wrench in everything as well. So that northern boundary is, it's right up against the city, and we just have a very small green belt between us and them. So if fire comes on our side or from there to us, then that's a problem, or and vice versa. It's a big issue. That it? Good? Yeah. Okay.
I guess I'll MC it too, huh? Raven showed his Fraser Wells Valentine treatment urban interface. What's designated and zoned is WUI structure infrastructure. The funding leading up to that, and Ashton, Gila River, and really expressing, the last few comments there is a corridor of the 10, Interstate 10, the raceway. So it's internal and external, and geographically, Raven kind of sits on a nice island out there surrounded by BLM and state and a lot of range acres, a lot of broken surface continuity, and of course the large Grand Canyon to the north. And opposed to Ashton here, public smoke can bring up a lot of attention. If you drive north, you see the amount of traffic that can be stopped and delayed traffic leading into the city, the raceway. I mean, so there's a lot more activity near the city that Ashton has to deal with, and these defensible space and the urban interface and the funding to be able to support that, but it's all in the preparation. Old times again. But it's not the reaction of a wildland fire. It's a strategic planning of putting folks in a safe position to stop, stall, and suppress a fire. So these programs are pretty important to all of us. Same thing at your local units, Forest Service, BLM, Park Service, who may it be, and then your own responsibility, urban interface. If you own an acre, probably have it prepped. If you own 10 acres in a ranch, you probably want to manage your own fuels there. So those are that would be a challenge on the reservation. I think the government did a good job, the history from the Department of War to where we are today, doing those things for the tribe. And generationally, can you take care of it for me? Whole different day, whole different era. You have a mind of your own. Get out there and grab a bite of that. So a lot of changes. But I will wrap things up here unless there's any final questions. Any questions? There's got to be at least two.
Raven and Ashton, have you all looked at any of the Forest Service fundings available, and if you have, what's
So I'll go first. So for the Forest Service, we have looked at some funding. There is nothing necessarily holding us up, but I guess to get to a little more of the weeds of things, for our timber program, we have a portable mill, and the Forest Service released about 10 to 15 new funding opportunities. And one thing that I argue a bunch with my tribal council is the match. They're usually right. We have to match some of these funding opportunities, and currently, right now, at least for my tribe, it's a no. Sometimes they do or they will match it, but it has to be, or it doesn't have to be, but the opportunity to improve the tribe has to be almost dire. In that sense, it's not the fact that they won't do stuff like that or items like that. It's just if they can get away without matching it, it's they prefer that because not to say anything to forestry, man, but I don't ask for 250. I ask for 2.5 million, and the tribe's usually not going to match something like that. So that's why. I saw one more. I don't know if you're going to tear off of his question or. So yeah, there's options out there.
Okay. So mine's similar to Raven's. It's the match. I oversee like 12 different grants. So the tribe like get rid of those first before we can talk about even doing a match. So that's usually the pushback with tribal council is where are we going to come up with this money and whatnot. So they normally want the money right all there and then. So yeah, that's our issue with finding funding like that.
Thank you for sharing that. And right now, all the Forest Service funding, except for two, which are congressionally mandated for a match, for tribes, all the matches completed right now. So other than the WIG grant, which is the Wood Infrastructure Grant, Wood Innovation Grant, and the tribal LSR, because those ones are, like I said, congressionally mandated that we have to have a match, but everything else in the matches that we have. So I'd love to talk to you about it.
Here's one if for 638 contracts, a match can be paid and used. And here's one example of one of our Arizona tribes. They had a match of about $35,000 for an ADOT project, and that was restoration around one of their campsites and one of their lakes there. So that there is potential there, and it's documented where that can take place. I think during COVID. That really brought a lot of these different regulations out because a lot of the funding needed some type of match, and the programs are able to use ISD to match those things. So so there's another mechanism, state, BIA, Forest Service. At the end of the day, forest health is the result. So was that 2 questions? Oh, did I just ask for 3? Hey, folks, we'll conclude from here. Thank Ashton for coming in and sharing what she's got going at Gila River, and Raven, what he's got going on at Hualapai. And we're all here to collaborate to improve those acres and trust assets. Thank you.